Hi everyone, in today's hobby video I'm going to paint a Cadian Shock Trooper in the colour scheme of the Cascraft Jackals. The Cascraft Jackals actually come from the 8th edition codex with a blue, white and black camo scheme. And the miniature in front of you here that I've started painting is the Minka Lesk miniature, which was a limited edition release, which I think is quite tough to get a hold of, but of course this miniature could replicate any other Cadian Shock Troop miniature that you wish to paint. I'm going to be using a combination of Vallejo and Games Workshop Citadel paints, which all of them will be in the description below, but let's get into it now. Okay, so I've undercoated the miniature using Dead White by Vallejo, and obviously use a bit of water to help the paint flow nice and neatly. And if you've got to do several thin coats, it's better than doing one big fat coat. And the first of the key colours to be doing is simply Black by Vallejo, and I'm painting her boots, her weapon, her armour, and also don't forget the bayonet scabbard on the back of the miniature. At this point I'm using a medium Citadel Artificer layer brush. You want to make sure you're using the right brush for the right job, but at this point simply just get it on with your Artificer medium Citadel paintbrush. Then we're using Rhinox hide by Citadel to paint the spats or the covers on her boots, her belt. And then if you are painting normal Cadians, you'll see of course they've got their webbing assembly, which is the harness system which goes over their armour. Cool, now we're using Vallejo Mahogany Brown to do any of the pouches on her webbing. And at this point you can still use a medium brush and do your very best not to mark any of the other colours you've already painted. Now paint any of the frag grenades with Citadel Castellan Green, and at this point you want to drop down to like a smaller brush to be a bit more precise. As I said before, don't worry too much if the paint is getting a bit messy, but don't try to paint over any of the other paints as that will require rework later on. Then using Bugman's Glow, also by Citadel, you're going to paint any of the exposed skins, obviously her hands, but also on her head. Now you see the way I've got this miniature process set up is that I actually paint the heads individually. Now you don't have to do this if you want to be a bit more quicker, but I certainly find painting the heads individually allows you to be a bit more targeted in how you do the precise parts of the face, eyes and any of the hair as well. Now given Minka Lesk isn't wearing a helmet in this case, you've also got to paint what seems to be like a bandana, and I'm using a brown to paint that. But if you're painting the Cadian chaps or guys or girls, they often are just wearing helmets, so just paint them normally like we are now. Okay, now it's actually using Army Paint of Vampire Red, and this is to paint the left shoulder guard. So you can tell, obviously this paint scheme, the left one is red and the right one is black. So Vampire Red now on the left shoulder guard. Okay, now to actually painting all of the actual clothing. So we're using Vallejo Prussian Blue. Now given we've done all the other detail, I want to be quite careful at this stage, and you want to go between using your medium brush to your small brush, and even if you've got an extra small brush, to make sure you don't go over any of the other paints you've already applied. So this process, you can obviously see I kind of do most of the detail first, then I fill in the blanks, being this cloth next. Okay, now to some finer detail using Vallejo Gunmetal, we're going to paint all of the silver aspects of the miniature. So obviously along the weapon, the las gun, there's several silver bits to get, like the buttstock, the magazine, and the front of the weapon towards the barrel. And likewise along the back of the miniature you've got like the scabbard of the bayonet, and there's some other one or two bits as well. So using gunmetal with your more detailed brush, pick out all the silver bits. Okay, a very important detail is painting the Aquila, this time on her las gun. So you may have it, depending on the Cadian you got, also on the chest, but in this case the only one that's visible is only on her las gun. So using Balhasar Gold by Citadel. One final detail is then using Gal Vorbak Red by Citadel, you're painting the handle or the grip of the bayonet. Now this is a bit of a different red, but it does give it quite a nice finish. Right, great job doing all the detail. Now we're going to start getting onto some washes or shades. So the first is Reikland Fleshshade by Citadel, and this goes over the skin of the miniature, but actually also the pouches of the miniature as well. Now it's a bit of a lighter finish, which means the pouches don't look too dark. But when you're doing this, do not go too heavy. You want to put them less is more in this approach. Don't slap it on too heavy. And if you do feel you want to put a bit more, just make sure you're doing it in gentle layers. Okay, now onto one of the best steps I think, which has definitely made miniature painting much quicker for me overall. So we're using Nuln Oil from Citadel Shade. Now this is applied basically to the entire miniature that's remaining, applied very carefully of course. Now the key thing here is you want to mix it either with plain water, or you can use Citadel Technical Lahmian Medium, which basically waters down paint. Now it's important to water it down because if you use it straight from the bottle, it's quite dark and at the minute it's looking very, very grim dark future. Now whilst we put on it everywhere, you're going to be using probably a medium brush and only applying it to say the uniform, bits of the weapon, and maybe even a little bit of the red. Don't put it over the actual armor itself or the las gun, given that when it dries it will leave a bit of a weird finish. So be somewhat liberal, but make sure you've watered down the Nuln Oil, and this will basically make all of the crevices, nooks and crannies, and also hide some of maybe imperfections you've painted as well on the cloth of the miniature. So go along there using a medium paintbrush to apply this mixture. Okay, well done. So the miniature is completely base coated now, and definitely could be argued is tabletop ready. But of course we want to make it even look more special, so we're using Citadel Mournfang Brown on all of the pouches to do the edges and corners of the pouches. Now try your best to think about how it would naturally wear, given this probably would be a leather material. So going on the edges, sides and corners of the pouches. Okay, again using Citadel Bugman's Glow to go back over the hands. Now the key point here is you're basically just picking on the fingers and the knuckles, and helps to make it just sort of subtly look a bit brighter again. Now actually I also use Bugman's Glow to actually apply a bit more weathering or highlighting to the pouches. So I use it on where the buttons would be on the pouches, and also potentially on the corners to give it a bit more of a subtly worn look on the leather pouches, so like they've actually got a fair bit of wear and tear. Cool, well now we're using Citadel Straken Green to highlight the grenade. So you want to be painting the flasp of the grenade, the thing that flicks off, and also like the grid style design of the actual grenade itself. Okay, back using Vallejo Mahogany Brown. Now we're going to basically highlight any of the spats which are along her boots, belt, and any webbing assembly. At this point you definitely would be using an extra small layer brush because you're getting some very, very minute detail. Like along the spats on her boots there's some buttons, you want to paint those in Mahogany Brown, and likewise doing the corners of the belts, and also any webbing assembly she's got on her armour. And now finishing off the handle of the bayonet using Vampire Red again by Army Painter. We're basically painting along the actual handle groups. Cool, now onto Vallejo Hot Orange. Using again your very finest brush to paint along the edges of the left shoulder guard. So basically around the outside and across the side of it as well. So using your finest brush to paint a thin line of Vallejo Hot Orange. Alright, using Army Painter Shining Silver to basically pick out all of the metallic details on the las gun, but also on the bayonet at the back as well. And depending on the Cadian you're painting, they may have other things hanging off, like maybe some like a cup, a drinking cup, or other sort of devices as well. So using Shining Silver by Army Painter to pick on any metallic items. Okay, good stuff so far, almost there. Now we're using Citadel Dark Reaper to highlight the black of the miniature. So of course this will capture the things like the las gun, her armour, her shoulder guard, her knee pads, and also the bayonet scabbard. Now a bit of a tip here is if you're painting any straight hard edges like along the side of the las gun, you can basically use the side of the brush to basically pull it along the actual corner or edge of the actual las gun. Any hard edges that are 90 degrees are easy to paint. When it comes to things like the armour, you basically want to draw a straight line following the edge, and this takes a bit more practice. Now if you do screw it up the first time, don't despair too much, because you can basically go back over with a black again and try and paint basically to form that line of Dark Reaper by basically painting another line of black over the top. Okay, almost there. Citadel Alaitoc blue to now highlight all of the cloth of her uniform. So you're basically looking for any of the crevices, folds, nooks and crannies in inverted commas, and obviously the edges of the uniform. So want to be using probably an extra small brush for this one to be quite precise, and this really will make the miniature look a bit more brighter as opposed to being quite dark now, is this bit of highlighting along the cloth of the uniform. Okay, some more finer detail, and now we've actually mixed Bugman's Glow and Cadian Fleshtone. The reason why you're mixing them together is just if you just use Cadian Fleshtone by itself, it's a very bright finish. Now when you basically use it, you want to be doing things like the knuckles very, very carefully, and any of the edges of the fingers. Now with the face, definitely I think at this point, you want to be painting things like her ears, her nose, and maybe even her cheekbones. But don't basically make it too bright, because it can make the miniature look like it's wearing too much makeup. So using a very, very small brush, you want to be basically doing like knuckles, finger edges, noses, eyebrows, and also ears. Okay, the final stage now is doing the camouflage. So I would actually recommend using Citadel Gal Vorbak to put on the black of the camouflage. Actually, I've mixed in this case Necromunda Cloak by Army Painter and my previous black by Vallejo. But when applying camouflage, you need to be pretty sporadic and inconsistent, because camouflage is never a consistent pattern. Now, there's definitely sharper, better ways to do this in a more concise detail. I probably see the way some Kazkin are painted, but I go from like a blotty, random finish, which definitely is a bit easier to paint. Repeat the same process again then with your whites, and in this case I'm using Vallejo Dead White. And the idea here is probably don't paint anything you've painted black on the camouflage. You want to be just doing independent white dots. Do try to keep them probably on the smaller side. You don't have like great big black dot, like big splashes of paint, given the miniature is obviously quite small. But go along with your white paint and finish off the camouflage scheme. Okay, now basing the miniature, obviously Minka Lesk has got a great big nice piece of scenery there. The Cadians don't always have anything like this. Now, you could just basically whack on straight away to the process I'm going here, which is I've painted the base all in the flat white, and then I'm using a product by Army Painter called Battlefield Snow. Now you apply this with PVA glue, basically plonking it on the base, then you dip the miniature in the product, and you basically tap off any of the stuff, the residual. You then basically let it dry for at least an hour or so, and then you basically go back over with your watered down white paint to basically make it look nice and bright. And then of course all your mess you've made like I have, you then finish off the actual base of the miniature using your black to clean up every bits of white that have come off. Okay, now onto the transfers, and that's going to be pretty much it. So two products I recommend to buy is a micro scale, micro set, and micro scale, micro sol. These two products make applying miniature decals way easier. Firstly, you cut out the decal you want to apply. You then soak it in water for 30 to 40 seconds, no longer. Then dab the actual decal on a piece of paper to remove any excess water. You then basically take your brush, which is soaked in micro set, and you slide the decal into place. It's quite precise work, but you just want to push it around, and ideally use a flat paintbrush if you can get hold of it, because that definitely makes a job a lot easier. Right, now you've got to let the decal dry a little bit, probably like at least 2 or 3 minutes, and then you get out your micro sol. Now micro sol at this point, it smells like vinegar, so I'm assuming it basically softens the decal, making it apply a lot easier. And you want to do numerous coats. So what I mean by coats is apply it once, leave the miniature for at least 3 minutes, come back to it and apply more, and go over and over again. And you don't have to like whack on loads of it. You basically want to have a little bit on the brush, but basically over time what will happen is the actual decal will basically curve around quite nicely. I definitely found with the newer Cadians and the new transfers, these decals don't stick nice and neat if you just use water. So by using micro sol particularly, it basically allows the actual transfer decal to firmly, nicely actually shape itself around the curvature of the actual armoured shoulder pad. Alright, there she is, fully finished and ready for the tabletop and to slay some heretics. So you can see I've actually applied also a name badge to her, a nameplate that is by Versatile Industries, which I'll put a link in the description below, and I've put it as my last name Hannon to represent my 15-month-old daughter, Rose Hannon, Guardsman Rose Hannon. So hopefully it has been helpful. I think the biggest unlock for anybody is going to be using watered down Nuln Oil to basically make the camouflage or her uniform look a lot sharper, and also allow her to make more mistakes, because you can basically sort of hide your boo-boos by using shades in the right places. Of course with these, one thing to remember is that Astra Militarum miniatures are absolutely tiny, the Guardsmen. They're physically small miniatures, so if you are struggling to paint them easily, don't feel bad because they're bloody tiny compared to, say, Space Marine or an Orc or a Adeptus Custodian. So hopefully helpful. It's a pretty proven process for me now. I've been painting these guys for many, many years, and hopefully look quite nice. Now, as you can see, I use various different paint companies. I think as you get into a bit more, you want to probably move away from GW because they're quite expensive, but their paints are very good. So what I'm actually end up doing is any of the primary colours or the key colours I use a lot of, I buy from other companies. Final point is to make sure you use the right brush size for the right job, and try and get your hands on a wet palette. So you might be seeing the video. I use a super cheap version, which is a cheap Tupperware sandwich box, some parchment paper, and a wet sponge as my own. So also I think a wet palette is a massive unlock to make your hobby painting a lot easier. So hopefully helpful. Let me know what you think of the miniature and the paint job, and any questions in the comments. If you enjoy this video and want to support me, you can do so by like, comment, or by subscribing. Joining my Patreon platoon if feeling super generous, or just watching any of my other YouTube videos. I'm a true Astra Militarum variety channel, covering everything from the hobby aspect, like this video here, the lore, and also the tabletop tactics of the 10th edition of Warhammer 40,000. A massive thanks to my current supporters, to get your bayonet sharp, las gun oil, faith from the Emperor strong. Patreon platoon, sound off. Tank Commander Glenn, Tank Commander Watchdog Van Etten, Tank Commander Mitchell, Lieutenant Burke Nielsen, Lieutenant Smith, Colour Sergeant DuPont, Sergeant Adal, Scott, the Colonel Merrill, Veteran Gibson, Hall, Lundeen, Guardsman Beard, Coquelin, Flint, Hills, Malik, Mitten, Nguyen, Tom, Tompkin, Conscript de Paz, England, Evan Gunn, Gillian, Goodwin, King.